Greetings! So I got to see Colour Out of Space, comeback movie for director Richard Stanley and starring Nicolas Cage and a bunch of people I didn't recognise, but who were rather decent. First, some background. I came across the Call of Cthulhu role-playing game way back and wanted to read the books, but like other writers, like Michael Moorcock, they were all out of print. So you had to go round these weird, out-of-the-way second-hand bookshops throughout London, head into the back past the bestsellers and rummage around in all the old, weird, dusty stuff in search of that occasional gem, which is rather Lovecraftian. I did find a great book that I thought was by him, but it was by this mad Arab fella, so I left it on the shelf. So tackling Colour Out of Space, one of his most highly regarded stories, that bar is set pretty high there, mate. I also grew up on 2000 AD, so when I went to see Hardware in the cinema, Richard Stanley's first real foray into film, I was like, hey, I know this. This is that short story Shock. I was also a big Filter the Nephilim fan, and went mental when I saw lead singer Carl McCoy in it, plus Lemmy and Iggy Pop, some Ministry played over a Gore video for some obscure reason. This director has some serious taste, says I. Later I found out he also did two of the best Filter the Nephilim music videos, Preacher Man and Blue Water, classics. I didn't catch Island of Dr. Moreau, the one he got kicked off of and resulted in me not making another film in decades. So many vital connections to things I love, but the trailer was okay, but it wasn't that inspiring. Even with all that connection, I went in dubious. Boy, was I wrong. This movie kicks ass in every dimension Cthulhu has a tentacle in. References to Arkham and Dunwich, and the investigator as a Miskatonic University top. So lots of references for the Lovecraft fan. So this is cosmic horror that uses the unknown and unknowable, the sanity-destroying truths behind everything, which replace the usual shock and gore. But there's still plenty of that as well, and the body horror aspects are very evocative of the classic John Carpenter flick The Thing. One of my main doubts about this film was that the titular colour is something beyond our ability to process. The solution, as you can see, is lots and lots of magenta. It's a colour that doesn't exist. Magenta, aka pink, well, there's no pink in the light spectrum, so it's our feeble mortal brains desperately bridging the gap between red and violet. So a perfect choice for a colour that is beyond our comprehension. The guys behind Colour also produced Mandy, which was also pretty decent. And there's a lot of magenta here as well. Is this that Banksy thing where he'd been doing rats for ages and someone said how clever it was that rat is an anagram of art and he just smiled and had to pretend he knew that all along? Maybe these fellas just dig magenta. Anywho, a little tangent here, so bear with me as I wander around a bit. I gotta draw a comparison to Dread. The movie with Carl Urban ruled. It was faithful to the source material. It had all the in-references for the fans. It was awesome. And it was supposed to be part of a trilogy that would have ended up with us getting the Dark Judges. Nice. But they went big for the first movie. 3D. It didn't do great. Hope for a trilogy was gone. But we may get a TV series instead. Guillermo del Toro was distraught after his R-rated vision for At the Mountains of Madness was shot down. I'd have loved to have seen that, but again, a big commit for an untested premise. The first solid cosmic horror outing. So Richard Stanley has made a small, and for a modern film, cheap, $6 million. That has made $216 million on its opening weekend. Mates of mine are fighting to find a place to see it and can't due to the limited release. The DVD comes out later this month, so it's likely going to make a lot more profit. Stanley is aiming for a trilogy. Make a small, solid movie. It does really well? Sweet, here's a bigger budget. Give the Dunwich Horror a go. If that also kills at the box office, then we get budget to take on At the Mountains of Madness. We get the Guillermo del Toro budget, the solid R rating, and the trilogy Dread had hoped for, just by starting small and working your way up. Hats off and wiggle your pseudopods in the air for Richard Stanley. Some people have bitched about the CGI and the effects, but this is a solid B-movie affair. The classic B-movie horrors, Hellraiser, Phantasm, The Gate, Puppet Master, even the ones that first tackled Lovecraftian material such as From Beyond and Reanimator. What, their effects were Star Wars quality? No! It was the story and the pacing, the characters and the premise. They made do with what they had with a small budget because horror flicks weren't blockbusters. Now beware, for here be spoilers. So there's a family out In the sticks, on a farm, a meteor hits, and slowly the land and then the animals and then the people all start to mutate and change. Weird stuff starts to grow, sanity starts to trickle away. It builds slow and keeps building, sucking you in until you're staring at the screen, appalled and riveted as reality literally starts to cave in. To illustrate, as we start down the road to inevitable insanity, there's a scene with Nicolas Cage in the shower. The water's not draining, and he sees this translucent blob covering the drain. He picks it up. It explodes with tendrils that snap down his forearm. Cut to him stomping past his wife. We're going to need a plumber, or an exterminator, as though this is just an everyday event on the farm. Oh, and the animals on the farm? Alpacas. Now, they're pretty bloody odd beasties as it is, but then to have them mutate and go all the thing, well, that's just wrong on so many levels. But then again, there is that scene. If you stared straight into the multi-dimensional horror of the Lovecraftian multiverse, it would haunt you less than seeing Nicolas Cage aggressively milking an alpaca. And so I'll round this up with a quick clip from near the end that, for me, epitomises everything stonkingly awesome about this film. Now that is grand stuff. One final thing. Obviously Stanley reads 2000 AD because of hardware. So was that black sun inspired from Zenith? This is a bit in the comic where the Loiga incubate in the sun, turning it black as they shed their superhuman bodies and transform into their true multi-dimensional forms. I don't know, but I'm greatly looking forward to finding out where Stanley will be taking us next, so long as I have enough sanity points left to cope with it. So hey, that was actually fun. I can see why people do this. I don't know, maybe I'll make more and waffle about other stuff. So hit subscribe or don't, blah 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 blah. Thanks for watching. Toodles!